Welcome to the Fachhochschule in St. Pölten for the 8th edition of the CTV conference. We've got some really exciting guests speaking about the future of digital storytelling, including someone who says we can get very close to sharks, an artist who claims he can bring other artists back to life, and someone who's looking at the history of how we've reacted to technological changes, as well as a man who says he can make advertisements that aren't annoying. It's a huge privilege and a pleasure to be here at what I think is an amazing institute. We've got a fabulous panel of experts. We're going to look at digital storytelling of the present and of the future, of course. We're going to learn how to get closer than perhaps I would feel comfortable with to sharks using virtual reality. We're going to talk to someone who can bring a dead artist back to life. Amazing technology. And also look at how the digital technology and digital storytelling can live, and future creative people can make money out of it without getting on the nerves of the consumers. That should be fascinating too. And also looking at how we've reacted to digital changes in the past. The title is Head of Content, Immersive, Branded, High Graded. What that means, I'm not the person to tell you. I'm going to be learning and watching. But Rosa von Soos is the director of this conference. She's also the leader of the media and digital technologies here at the Fachhochschule in St. Pölten. It's a great pleasure to welcome you onto the stage, Rosa von Soos.
Thank you, Chris. Wir haben eine Situation, wo Programmveranstalter ihren Content und ihre Inhalte künftig anders anbieten müssen. Inklusiv soll das Programm sein, mobil soll es sein und adaptiv. Head of Content stellt also Medienmacher und Macherinnen vor neue Herausforderungen. Für die Programmplanung heißt das neue Wertschöpfungsmöglichkeiten, branded. Und für die Kreativen, für die Autoren heißt das, ich kann meinen Content quer über die Plattformen kontrollieren und gestalten. Und nicht zuletzt, der User wird Head of Content. Er entscheidet, bleibe ich dran, interagiere ich oder lasse ich es eben bleiben. Durch Diskurs und Anwendung wollen wir Themen hier an die Hochschule bringen und Kontrolle über die Inhalte erfahren. Wie lässt sich das kontrollieren? Was sind die Gesetzmäßigkeiten? Am Beispiel von VR wird ganz deutlich, dass es sich hier nicht nur um eine Erweiterung von Foto, Film oder auch Game handelt, sondern dass wir hier mit ganz neuen Gesetzmäßigkeiten zu tun haben. Und diese wollen erst analysiert und erprobt werden. Und da ist es notwendig, dass Plattformen geschaffen werden, wo dieser Diskurs gemeinsam mit jungen Studierenden, den Medienmachern der Zukunft und Experten geleistet wird. Heads of Content mit den Tags Immersive. Jene Inhalte, mit denen wir verschmelzen, die anders ausschauen als in den frühen Nullerjahren. Dazu spricht Kim Majkut, sie aus der Perspektive der Regisseurin und Directorin. Ebenso aus der Perspektive des Gestalters berichtet Oliver Gingrich. Er bringt den Aspekt der Holographie mit rein. Den Begriff Immersive Journalism, der von Nonny della Penna geprägt wurde, sie wird gerne vom Guardian auch als Mutter von VR bezeichnet. Von ihr haben wir eine Videoaufzeichnung und sie bringt uns in Krisengebiete. Jene Inhalte, mit denen es möglich ist, Marketing und Werbung nicht als bloße Störfelder oder nervige Zwischenschaltungen zu sehen, sondern als etwas Neues. Unser Gast George Nimeh bringt hier neue Eindrücke und kreative Möglichkeiten der Wertschöpfung von Content Marketing und Native Advertising. Unser letztes Schlagwort, High Graded. Jene Inhalte, deren Bild- und Tonqualität meistens besser ist, als früher unser Standard war. Hochwertige 360 Grad Real-Videobilder wollen wir sehen. Mehr Auflösung, höhere Qualität, 360 Grad Ton. Martin Reinhart zeigt Ausschnitte aus seinem preisgekrönten Film Mobilisierung der Träume, und mit ihm können wir im Rückspiegel schauen. Was waren früher die Begehrlichkeiten? Gab es da ähnliche? Bleibt nur noch unser Hashtag CTV-Konferenz 2016. Viel Spaß bei der Konferenz.
We're now going to hear from Majkut. She's from Canada. She lives in London now. She's a multi-award-winning creative director, and she's been twice nominated for the BAFTA, a very, very prestigious media award. She has a background as an illustrator and a designer. She's also worked as a writer, director, producer. Pretty talented woman with a portfolio spanning motion graphics, live action, virtual reality, and post-production for broadcast. So, Majkut.
I wish I could have been there today at the CTV conference, but unfortunately, I wasn't able, and I really wish I could have been there. I was really excited to see the conference, what was going on, the workshops, and engage with some of your really amazing speakers that are presenting with you today. First, VR, it's all new. It's something that we're all discovering together. So when you're creating VR, you got to remember that it is tough for everyone. It is something that is in early days, and when early days happen, you have to use things like your imagination to come up with solutions. You have to develop techniques that probably aren't what you use every day. Watching films and movies, you see masters like Stanley Kubrick and how he mastered the lens and lighting and his different techniques across different films to get the story across. Well, you got to remember, these people now, these directors nowadays have come through generations of directors who have forged the way. I mean, it all started with a bunch of people sitting in a cinema, black and white, no sound, a piano player in the corner, and they stuck, remember, I think the story is someone filmed a train coming towards the camera, and the first reaction of the audience was to get up and run, because I've never seen anything like that before. Well, that's where we are right now in VR. We're that train coming to the screen. Though my first experience is 20 years ago, it is now moving into a time where it is able to be presented to the public because the technology has caught up with us. And while we're creating stuff for this technology, this is still quite new, we have to use our imagination and ask questions to present it further. So this brings me to my first VR experience. We created a VR experience for Nissan at Le Mans. This is when YouTube just launched 360 video to the public. So this is one of the first 360 YouTube experiences. It was new. And we wanted to make sure that when we created this experience, it wasn't just a camera strapped to a bonnet of a car and going around a track. Because we knew that everyone can do that. It is an obvious answer, but why not make it feel like the viewer has created the option of being at Le Mans, to being in the Nissan car? So we did a heads-up dashboard and a track selection at the beginning. It was one of the things that made the video very popular because the viewer automatically felt like they're being involved in something. You got to remember, 360 video alone doesn't drive the content you're creating. It's what you put into it. It's your imagination. So you're creating a narrative. through a medium that surrounds us, that takes us outside of a flat screen surface and puts us inside a world. And this world can be anything. Immersive experiences are how I believe we're creating VR. I teamed up again with these guys who I worked Le Mans Video with, and they're doing educational content for kids, which I believe is a very powerful way to use VR as a tool. So the guys at Curioscope created this video, which I'll show you right now.
See that school of fish? Follow it. It's good news. Sharks are coming. Oh, fantastic. A great white. I'd say around 5 meters. That was pretty close. Sharks have amazing senses. She's picking up the tiny vibrations of those amberjacks. Let's take a closer look inside. That huge liver fuels long, non-stop migrations, and those muscles warm her blood. We now think that females may have to be over 33 years old before they're even able to breed, so they are hugely threatened by being caught as juveniles. As marine biologists, our research and study helps protect these incredible animals.
So like most things, everything has a first. And it's exciting to make firsts for people, especially like many people in the audience. It's probably their first time working in VR. Ask questions, find creative solutions in order to solve problems such as, is this a first-person viewer? Is this a fly-in-the-wall scenario? Do you want the viewer to feel like they're interacting, engaging with the content that you're creating for them? Are they supposed to be learning something? Then, after you've figured out what you want the viewer to walk away with, create a narrative that engages them. It is a tricky medium to work in, and kudos to all you guys that are willing to take on the pain and suffering of VR. But be creative in your solutions, push the boundaries, and remember, VR is at its baby step still. A wild west where new frontiers are constantly being forged and knocked down and rebuilt day after day. So best of luck on your VR endeavors today, and I hope this talk was helpful and inspirational. Thank you.
Wonderful. What a charming speech from Kim, and she's absolutely right. It's very exciting, if a little risky, working on the frontiers, but that's perhaps the best place to be working. And also, I think it's fantastic that she's using virtual reality to tell stories about sharks that isn't demonizing them, but celebrating them. I'm a big fan of that. And if you get involved, it seems you can live in a wonderful loft. That was one of the nicest houses I've seen in a long time. Our next guest is George Nimeh, and he's been in the digital entrepreneur business for 2 decades. And he also lectures at the University of Vienna and the FH Wien, University of Applied Science. Let me welcome onto the stage now, George Nimeh. Hello, George. Hey,
Hi. I was at the New York Times, Red Bull, and recently at Courier. And since January of this year, I've founded my own agency to help the digital market here in Vienna. So I grew up in Rochester, New York. Rochester is the home of Kodak. It's that little photography company that sat on the patents for digital technology for 30 years and is currently being disrupted out of business. It got me close to the idea of what can happen in disruptive environments very early on. And so I thought we'd look back a little bit in order to look forward. How many of you know what this is? It's the first banner ad. In 1994. over 20 years ago. And the agency that I worked with, Organic Online, was responsible for developing one of these for AT&T. So somehow the shitstorm and the crap that we're in today, with all the banner ads going out and the market that we're having trouble with, it's all kind of my fault. So I'm sorry. Let's look back in order to look forward. This is Wikipedia in 1888. Look how far it's come in such a short time. The world's resources and libraries now in a place where we can all access them all the time. This is the iPad in 1955. And when they tell you that digital technology makes you antisocial, show them pictures like this and point out the fact that we're actually more connected and more networked and more social today than the people that were buried heads down in one-directional media before. This is WhatsApp in 1944. And if they were eating the notes, it would be Snapchat. That, ladies and gentlemen, is my best joke of the day. This is the New York Times in 1996 when I was working there. In that time, they used the same kind of technology and banner ads as they are today. And it's not working. This slide kind of speaks for itself, right? How many of you have intentionally clicked on a banner ad in the last month? Exactly. There's 200 million people using an ad blocker a month. And it's growing at 49% a year. And that is the world that we're living in. And when I give this talk, regardless of the audience, young, old, experienced, inexperienced, those are the two answers that we get. And that is why this business needs to change. TV is in massive trouble with people under 50. In the United States today, if you're 50 plus, your viewing habits are just fine. And the major people selling advertising to you, they're very, very happy. If you're under 50 years old, and definitely if you're under 35, you're time-shifting your viewing habits, you're fast-forwarding through ads, and you're not looking at this medium the way that people want you to. Things are changing, and the business isn't keeping up. I had to memorize this line when I worked at Courier, that Austria is a print land. And I really tried to figure out why. And I finally came to a couple conclusions. One, you're old. You're the 6th oldest country by median age on the planet. So I have what I call, this is new, the Mercer-Monaco-Deloitte dilemma. In Austria, we have an incredibly high quality of life. It's why I've moved back. Healthcare, schools, almost no crime. But at the same time, it breeds comfort. And that comfort creates an environment where we're less likely to invest. In their Deloitte Radar study of 2016, actually said this. The line is that because it's so good, people think to themselves, why change? And so you have this dilemma between a great place and a place that you need to be. And I like to tell people, you can't invent the future by investing in the past. So you need to look forward in order to protect our heritage, to keep that nostalgia that we like so much. One of the things that's definitely changing is mobile. The medium is the message basically comes down to the fact that the individual characteristics of any media dictate why it's so special. Who here has a smartphone? Can you unlock them, please? Hand them to the person to your right. Do you feel it? That certain unease? What would you feel like if it was a radio or a newspaper? What would you feel like if it was a book? This thing is offering experiences that the world has never known, and emotions and a quality of connection that we've never felt before. Altogether, what we're coming to is not a digital revolution, it's an apocalypse. So, last little example, I took this last night. The Sports Authority is the latest in a chain of large stores going out of business in the United States. They're shutting them all down because they went into debt buying bricks and mortar stores instead of investing in digital, and they got outpaced by Amazon.com and Dick's Sporting Goods in the meantime. They went from first place in the market to out of business in less than 10 years. It took Nokia 30 or 40 years. It took Kodak 50 years. It's going to start taking 2 and 3 years for this stuff to happen. And people need to wake up before it's all gone. So Plato once said that those who tell the stories will rule society. And I think it's telling something to us about a new age where barking at people and trying to sell products is going to be replaced by telling stories and getting authentic connections. This is David Ogilvy. right? He did great ads for American Airlines, for example, when they had a new premium service. It was pretty easy. Now it's a little bit trickier because it's not the only people selling it. But the one thing that he did, Ogilvy recognized the value of native advertising. The fact is that it's here and it's happening. The question is, what do we do about it? How do we use it? And how do we move forward with it? Because the other stuff isn't working. This is now a relatively more complicated era where the ecosystem that we're all operating in is incredibly more complicated. The thing that brings it all together, in my perspective, from a marketing and advertising perspective, are people, and in particular the customers. And that without a customer-centric view, you're dead. In other words, if you start talking about yourself and your own product, if you just go sell, 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 I think people will start turning off. I think that in very few cases where people are looking for particular products at particular times, they want to hear about stories. They want to hear about the situation that they're in before they get to the product. And that's all about customer centricity. This is Jeff Bezos. Bezos pioneered the idea of if this, then that online, people who like this, like that. Jeff bought the Washington Post 3 years ago for not very much money. And in a very short time, using very geeky means, using data and the ability to understand the people who were using his product, he took the Washington Post from a third place, or actually a top 10 website in the United States, and is currently competing with BuzzFeed. And he's done it by putting together data and his content in a way that appealed to people. And it's a very new way of looking at things, and it showed dramatic growth in a very, very little bit of time. How many of you use Spotify? How many of you have tried Spotify Discover? Spotify Discover is a great tool. The data has been and is part of their storytelling. It's about using actual people in a narrative that's interesting. They triangulate data and people and stories and bring that stuff forward into a product. This is a much too complicated slide for today to show you how it all works. But it does work in a systematic way. It's not about the art of content anymore. It's about the science of content. And that science goes through data gathering. It goes into profile creation. It goes into using that data in order to create products. This is Dao. She is the chief data scientist at BuzzFeed. She's done the same, to use data in order to gather traction in the market, to bring it to people. She's now the publisher of BuzzFeed, a chief data scientist that's become the publisher of one of the most read publications on the planet. Zay Frank is the head of BuzzFeed Film Studios. If you want to look at where the future of online content and video creation is going, go look up his name. It's all about data-driven marketing, and there are plenty of examples out there. For what it means for you, in my opinion, is where you go next. If you don't understand the world that we're living in today from a media, marketing, and advertising and content production perspective, from an editorial to a marketing perspective, I think you're dead. Because this is where it's all going. And it will go here with or without Austria. It will go here with or without you. And I encourage you to go on that journey to figure out how you get from A to B as fast as possible, and figure out how to unlock that power of data and content and storytelling to bring it online as fast as possible. There's plenty of best practices examples from all kinds of publications, from Time to the Washington Post to the CNN to award-winning projects from the New York Times. These are amazing programs of content that bring content first before they try to sell you something, before there's advertising. An entire series called The Beauty Inside, an 8-part video series put online by Toshiba and Intel with millions of views, and it's a really cool movie. Miss Sate is doing this thing called Miss BFF. It's a content and contest combination. I've tried to go as fast as I can. Thank you for the extra time, and thank you for having me here today.
Our next guest, Oliver Gingrich, is from Austria but lives in London now. And he's one of these people who can bring people back to life. You might find it creepy, you might find it exciting, but for example, he was behind the project that saw a hologram version of Michael Jackson performing alongside real musicians. Oliver Gingrich.
Ich spreche heute über Pepper's Ghost, also gemeinhin holographische Projektion, bekannt. Es ist ein überaus interessantes Feld. Ich habe 2006 bei MDH Hologram zu arbeiten begonnen. Die Firma hat sich eben in dem Jahr vor allem einen Namen gemacht, international mit den Grammys und den European Music Awards, bei dem Madonna gemeinsam mit den Gorillaz aufgetreten ist. Ja, und jetzt nochmal ganz kurz, worum es geht. Wie ihr seht, geht es darum, die perfekte Illusion zu erzeugen, also Hologramme auf der Bühne neben echten Menschen auftreten zu lassen. Und im Idealfall weiß man eben nicht, was echt ist und was eine Illusion ist. Hologramme können in fast allen möglichen Räumen aufgeführt werden, also von Schaufenstern über 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 Meter große Bühnen. Hier das Beispiel von Tupac, der eben wieder zum Leben erweckt worden ist. Und das Schöne ist eben, dass man Visual Effects mit quasi einem Realismus auf der Bühne kombinieren kann. Und das ist das, wo es wirklich spannend wird, wenn man nicht mehr weiß, was ist echt, was ist unecht und das mit visuellen Effekten kombiniert. Zuerst mal die Technologie selber. Es ist ein sehr einfacher Bühnentrick, der aus dem Jahr 1860 stammt, ursprünglich von Dr. Pepper entwickelt, also er hat das erste Patent angemeldet. Henry Dirks ist der Urerfinder der Technologie und dieser Theatertrick hat ursprünglich wirklich mit Smoke and Mirrors, sagt man auf Englisch, also quasi mit großflächigen Spiegeln und Glas funktioniert. Von dem Jahr 1863 bis heute hat sich sehr viel geändert. Vor allem sind die Projektionen jetzt nicht mehr geisterhaft, sondern eben sehr lebensecht. Also hier sieht man Fergie und Tabu gemeinsam mit Apple und will.i.am auf der Bühne und die Zuseher hatten in dem Fall, das war schon vor 5 Jahren mittlerweile, bis zuletzt einfach nicht gewusst, ob wer echt ist und wer nicht echt ist und das ist eben die Kunst der Sache, also das virtuelle Bild mit dem echten Bild so gut wie möglich zu vermengen. Es gibt immer eine große Lichtquelle, die versteckt ist, also für die Zuschauer nicht einsichtig, die ein Primärbild, so nennen wir das, auf eine Oberfläche projiziert und dieses Primärbild refraktiert dann in einem Raum. Das Wichtige dabei ist eben die Räumlichkeit und genau abschätzen zu können, wie das Bild aufgefasst wird. Also den Zuseher Einblickswinkel zu sehen und mit in die Produktion mit einfließen zu lassen. Wenn man es richtig macht, dann kann man eben wirklich Zuschauer damit komplett in eine illusionistische Welt hineinführen. Hier zum Beispiel für Mariah Carey. Das war ein Flashmob, der in 5 Locations in Europa stattgefunden hat. Das Schöne ist eben wirklich, dass die Zuseher über die ersten 2 Lieder nicht wussten, ob Mariah Carey wirklich auf der Bühne ist oder ob es sich um ein Hologramm handelt. Und erst nach 2 Liedern zerspringt sie dann eben in alle möglichen Einzelteile. Man darf eben nichts dem Zufall überlassen. Das ist bei der Produktion das Aufwendige. Man muss genau wissen, wie die Zuseher das finale Bild sehen. Lichtsetzung ist bis auf das Feinste abgestimmt. In dem Fall gab es auch ein Body Double, das sich zuerst auf die Bühne geschlichen hat, sodass die Leute gesehen haben, dass jemand auf die Bühne tritt. Und dann ist eben wirklich alles getimed. Und diese Installation ist in 5 Locations zur selben Zeit aufgeführt worden. Ja, das ist das Tolle bei der Sache, dass wenn alles gut geplant ist, dann funktioniert diese Illusion eben auch. Der andere große Wechsel von den 1860er Jahren bis heute ist, dass die Größe keine Rolle mehr spielt. Also damals waren 6 Meter das absolute Maximum. Heute kann man Installationen machen, die eben 28, 30 oder 100 Meter breit sind. Für euch interessant ist wahrscheinlich auch ein bisschen der Ablauf, der nicht wirklich viel anders ist als in jeder anderen Medienkreation. Zuerst einmal bekommt man einen kleinen Briefing. Ich bin Art Director, also meine Rolle ist quasi Conceptboard, Moodboard zu entwickeln, den Job bestätigen, Storyboard zu entwickeln und dann geht es in die Präproduktion, das heißt Casting, Choreography, Live-Action-Shoot bis hin zu Animatic Playblast, Edits und dann dem finalen Layoff der Abnahme. Besonders wichtig ist eben die Technik, auf der einen Seite mit der Produktion zu vermengen. Also man muss wirklich von Anfang an darauf achten, dass die beiden koinzidieren und dass es da keine Diskrepanzen gibt. Ja, und wenn es eben richtig gemacht wird, dann ist das finale Resultat. Und es kann eben auch wie hier ein 4-seitiges Hologramm sein. Die Fontie ist eben in einer Pyramide. Und gleichzeitig ist es eben auch möglich, das Unmögliche möglich zu machen, wie zum Beispiel Menschen wieder zum Leben zu erwecken. Also Tupac Shakur ist, wie ihr wahrscheinlich wisst, eben auf einer Bühne vor 1000 von Menschen aufgetreten, hat dann Millionen von YouTube-Hits erwirkt. Und das Schöne ist eben hier, dass das extrem technisch Aufwendige auf der Bühne so einfach und so lebensecht ausschaut. Ein anderer von den Mythen, die um die Hologrammwelt rangen, ist, dass es nur im Dunkeln passiert. Da hat sich in der Technik sehr viel geändert. Nicht nur in der Kameratechnik, in der Animation, Live Motion Capture, sondern auch im Displaybereich. Also durch LED-Technologien kann man wirklich in hellen Räumen bei Tageslicht Hologramme veranstalten, was früher nicht machbar war. Nur noch ein paar Beispiele. Hier World Expo. In dem Fall hatten wir 10 Tage Zeit, 6 verschiedene Kunstwerke zu kreieren. Wir haben dafür den Silver Award gewonnen. Ja, es muss nicht immer sehr, sehr schwierig und aufwendig sein. Und das ist vor allem für euch als Kunstschaffende oder als Medienschaffende interessant. Der Bereich Projektionskunst, wie kann man experimentieren mit der Technologie? Das Schöne ist eben, dass man wirklich die Welt der Performance mit der Welt der Animation verbinden kann. Wir haben schon vor einiger Zeit, also 2008, die Motion Academy entwickelt, ein Testforum für Künstler, für VJs, für Medienschaffende, für Performer, um mit der Technologie zu spielen. Und ja, da gibt es interaktiven Möglichkeiten, vor allem für Echtzeit, also quasi kinetische Skulpturen zu entwickeln, durch Movement, durch Live-Movement, was man eben auch mit Live-Performance kombinieren kann. Ein paar Künstler, mit denen ich zusammengearbeitet habe, die für euch interessant sein könnten. Maddie Boyd arbeitet sehr viel mit Wahrnehmung. Rachel Garrett arbeitet sehr viel mit Live-Performance. Laura Jean Healy, sie kreiert Unterwasser-Welten. Evgenia Emmets ist vor allem interessant, weil sie über fast 10 Jahre auch verschiedene Kunstwerke entwickelt hat. Für euch speziell interessant, denke ich mir, ist Realtime, also gerade im Bereich VR. Man kann, wie wir das gemeinsam mit der Emblematic Group entwickelt haben, Sound in Visuals verwandeln. Hier zum Beispiel für das größte Taubstummen-Festival in England, bei dem Taubstumme quasi Musik als Echtzeit-Lichtskulptur erfahren. Und es ist ein tolles Interface, bei dem irrsinnig viel möglich ist. Und was speziell spannend ist, ist auch einfach die Vielzahl der verschiedenen Inputs, ob es sich um Animationen handelt, um Motion Capture handelt oder auch um andere Input-Methoden, wie zum Beispiel hier. Hier modelliere ich die Brainwaves, also die Gehirnwellen eines meiner Kollegen in Echtzeit durch Motion Capture, ganz einfach mit Kinect. Das ist eigentlich nur ein Prototyp, ein Demo. Aber diese Echtzeitinteraktion, die ist schon einfach wirklich spannend und da ist einfach wirklich viel möglich. Noch ganz kurz Aura, das ist eines der letzten Kunstwerke, die ich vor kurzem entwickelt habe, hier auch mit EEG. Hier ist die Idee, dass die Konzentration der Zuseher auf eine Lichtskulptur gemappt wird und auch in Echtzeit moduliert und adaptiert wird. Das heißt, je mehr sich der Zuseher konzentriert, desto mehr werden die Gedankenströme in verschiedene Farbgebungen verwandelt. Also ihr seht, es gibt unglaubliche Möglichkeiten mit der Technologie. Interessant ist eben auch die Vielzahl an verschiedenen Faktoren, die dabei zum Tragen kommen. Also auf der einen Seite Recording, auf der anderen Seite sozial und das ganze Spektrum dazwischen. Und also wie ihr seht, es ist ein sehr multidimensionales Medium. Ja, und noch abschließend etwas, was für euch im Bereich VR und sonst auch überall spannend ist. Interactivity, Realism, Immersion, diese 3 Komponenten, die dann schlussendlich den Haupteindruck ausmachen. Also das ist etwas, mit dem ihr unendlich viel spielen könnt, um eben interessante mediale Produkte zu entwickeln.
Our next guest is Martin Reinhart. He's an experimental filmmaker, a film technician. He's involved in all sorts of the technical aspects of films. And he's also interested in the history of films. Today, Martin's going to be talking about a film looking back over the years at how we've reacted to new technology. So please invite onto the stage Mr. Martin Reinhart. Did I explain this right? Yeah.
Right. Yes, thank you for having me here. I'm very honored. I basically do not want to talk about the future of television, but the history of the future of television. So what we actually did was, together with my co-directors Manu Luksch and Thomas Tode, we compiled a movie from more than 200 historic film excerpts dealing with media history. We generated a 90-minute narration about the history of the future. So what we did is we were looking into our media heritage and tried to find as many films that were talking about media usage and try to put it into a context with today's media world. The movie is called Dreams Rewired. It had its premiere last year at the Rotterdam Film Festival and made his way through a lot of international festivals and is now shown in cinemas worldwide. I'm going to show two small excerpts. One is dealing with fantasies about television, so how people at the turn of the last century imagined that television would look like. And the second excerpt, which is a little bit longer, I called "We are connected, observed and controlled, and we like it." This is mainly footage from the 1920s and 30s that already shows this kind of uneasiness in connection with media. So this was one interesting thing we found, that even before television as an actual media existed, people already kind of imagined that it might used by criminals or it might used by the state as in means of controlling someone. So let's start with the first one.
We ride, wide-eyed, open-hearted, ready for anything, on electric pavements into the future. Things of the future now in our homes. Electrified, the last word in comfort and efficiency. The powers on display are almost occult. The pull of a lever, a simple gesture, calls up a distant friend. The machines don't work yet, but the vision is clear. And it's given a name. Television.
Let's say these visions or these utopian views on media are not necessarily obsolete. A lot of ideas came into life in the 1800s or 1900s can still be revived. And this was also a topic that we found very interesting, that although the technology used in the 1900s, 1910s, 1920s seem kind of awkward and old-fashioned, the spirit and the utopian ideas behind it actually were quite recent. Okay, this is now the second excerpt I'm going to show.
A screen in every home. And electric eyes spanning the globe. Building one world to share. Making neighbors of our most distant friends. But wouldn't that mean that anyone could look into our rooms? Into our lives?
Donnerwetter. Da sind wir ja drin im Haus. Ja. Tobias, wir gehen durch die Wände. Eine unheimliche Macht, die wir da in Händen haben.
Yeah, if you want to know more about the movie, please visit our webpage. And I think that the movie will be available as an online streaming service soon, and this also should be published on our website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was fascinating. I have a couple of questions. Why did you want to get involved in this project in the first place? What was it that fascinated you about the theme?
I worked at the Technical Museum at the time. I was a curator for photography and film. I basically was very much aware of like the historical dimension of media And this led to the idea to try to find all this material which has been in archives for more than 80 years and to compile it and make a movie out of it.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I always think that today's new developments are kind of scary with advertising that follows you everywhere, or, for example, 3D technology, or, of course, virtual reality.
3D is a good example. I mean, 3D came up even before photography was invented. So the heydays of 3D were in 1851. So what most people don't know is that most of the photographic images that were taken in the 1860s and 1870s were actually stereoscopic pictures and not regular photographs. So when, there's always this idea of novelty, like immersive media. You can have immersive media in 1870 or 1880 if you take a close look.
So the idea is then just the technology's getting better. What I was actually going to ask you is, because it wasn't until I watched that fantastic film, The Artist, which was about the golden era of the silent movies, when people were starting to talk in the movies, and it was for many people a horror. This couldn't possibly happen,
That's also one of these media myths. There never was silent movies. I mean, the origin of the movie actually was to illustrate a talking machine. Edison wanted his phonograph to be, advertised with moving pictures. So the very first film made in 1892 was a talking movie. We have this kind of narration that says, okay, everything started with black and white things, and then they started to talk, and then they became color, and then they got like three-dimensional. It's basically not true. Everything was there from the beginning.
So the film will surprise us in many ways. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, these rapid changes in technology are throwing up some really interesting questions, aren't they? Fantastic speakers today, but now it's time to get onto the hands-on part of the CTV conference, the workshops.
Mein Name ist Kerstin Blumstein, ich bin Researcher am Institut für Creative Media Technologies. Thema meines Workshops ist Data Visualization in Time-Based Media. Time-Based Media, zeitbasierte Medien, sind halt Medien, die zusätzlich zu dem physikalischen Medium noch eine Zeitorientierung haben. Das heißt, ich kann sie mit Ablauf einer Zeit mehr anschauen. Einfachstes Beispiel TV. Aktuell ist ja eher so, dass man Infografiken verwendet, die nicht wirklich interaktiv sind, weil der User selbst keine Interaktion mit denen machen kann. Und wir sehen da eher so zukünftiges Potenzial darin, dass man zum Beispiel über Second-Screen-Geräte da halt wesentlich mehr mit interaktiven Datenvisualisierungen den User selbst mit involvieren machen kann.
Mein Name ist Wolfgang Eigner, ich bin wissenschaftlicher Leiter am Institut für Creative Media Technologies an der FH St. Pölten und das Thema meines Workshops ist Data Visualization in Time-Based Media. In der Visualisierung geht es im Grunde darum, wie man aus Daten Bilder macht, denn nicht zuletzt sagt ein Bild oft mehr als 1000 Worte. Die ganze Thematik spiegelt sich auch in der Konzeption und der Produktion von Bewegtbildinhalten wider.
Mein Name ist Florian Thalhofer. Ich bin Künstler, lebe in Berlin und bin hier, um einen Workshop zu machen. Und der trägt den Titel Transmedia Storytelling. Vermutlich wird man Dinge entwickeln, die dazu führen, dass Leute sich besser mit der Welt befassen können, als es bisher ist. Was uns jetzt eben Transmedia Storytelling ermöglicht, und das finde ich eben so total aufregend, das ist, dass sich der Autor ein Stück weit rausnimmt, nicht ganz. Bisher war es so, dass man in der Art des Erzählens immer nur Dinge völlig erzählen konnte. Also der Autor hat den Inhalt völlig vorgegeben. In der Transmedia Story kann man Freiräume schaffen. Ich kann Dinge erzählen, die ich weiß, und ich kann die Freiräume schaffen, die ich nicht weiß.
Mein Name ist Siegfried Steinlechner, ich bin Redakteur beim Dokumentarfilm. Heute bin ich hier beim Workshop Transmedia Storytelling. Ich bin überzeugt davon, dass Menschen, die sich mit Transmedia Storytelling intensiv beschäftigen und das versuchen auch zu leben, auch daran arbeiten, dass diese Welt besser wird, weil sie nicht mehr sich an ein Medium klammern, sondern bei allen Themen die Darstellung und Umsetzung in mehreren Medien mitdenken, mitleben und damit einen wesentlichen Beitrag dazu leisten, dass es auf dieser Welt mehr Kooperation gibt als Trennung.
Mein Name ist Jennifer Bichele. Ich bin Mitglied der Research Group Media Creation an der FH St. Pölten und das Thema meines Workshops ist Alternate Reality Game. Bei Alternate Reality Games, wie der Name schon sagt, verschwimmt oft die Realität mit der Fiktion und die Story wird getrieben von den Handlungen der Spielerinnen. Alternate Reality Games gibt es ja schon sehr lange. In Zukunft könnte man das sicherlich noch stärker nutzen, beispielsweise in Verbindung mit Virtual Reality oder mit 360-Grad-Videos.
Mein Name ist Harpo Haska, ich bin wissenschaftlicher Mitarbeiter an der Fachhochschule St. Pölten und das Thema meines Workshops ist 360-Grad-Videoproduktion. Ich glaube, es liegt sehr stark an dem, wie der Content aufbereitet wird und wie man das Tool 360-Grad-Video zum Erzählen einer Geschichte verwendet. Was ich glaube, ist, dass man Formate sehen wird, die im Langspielformat zumindest zum Teil in 360-Grad-Video realisiert werden.
Ich bin Michael Schlamberger, ich bin Kameramann und Regisseur und das Thema meines Workshops heute ist 360-Grad-Video. Das ist ganz anders als jeder andere Film, weil man wirklich ein Immersive Media hat, wo der Zuschauer eintaucht und wo es auch nicht nur in der Kameratechnik, in der Umsetzung, in der technischen, kameramäßigen Umsetzung, sondern vor allem auch in der Gestaltung ganz andere Gegebenheiten gibt als beim normalen Film. 360-Grad-Videos werden vielleicht in einem gewissen Umfang bleiben, werden auch Wahrnehmung selbstverständlich ändern. Ich glaube, dass sie ihren Platz haben werden, aber nicht den normalen Film übernehmen werden.
Let me ask back onto the stage for the discussion, Mr. George Nimeh. Oliver Gingrich, and he hardly got any time to sit down, but let's have him up again. Martin Reinhart. So this is an interactive discussion, and you found, hopefully, on your seats a special code where you could give your opinion to certain questions that have been raised. And the good thing about this, unlike in the elections, if you haven't voted yet, there is no cut-off point. You can keep voting. And let me just find the questions. Is there anything that worries you about virtual reality particularly?
Yes, it is an immersive technology, and yes, it puts you at the center of everything, and yes, you're following somebody else's vision, but I think as long as we as individuals are aware that we always have a choice, I'm not particularly worried personally.
I just want to remember this discussion in the 1950s where television kind of became a public thing, and there were like all these articles by professors of psychology saying, okay, more than 10 minutes of television will actually kind of hypnotize you, and you will be the willingness victim of the broadcasting company or the state or whoever does it. Whenever you look back in history, you will find the same arguments with a different media, and we will think it's comical.
I think that if, on some level, if we're not careful and don't understand what's going on in the world that we're living in, we're kind of doomed to continue to repeat the same mistakes of the past. We live in a culture today where in the United States kids are watching more television than ever, spending more time on the couch rather than being active, have a higher rate of diabetes than ever, are more prone to heart attacks than ever before, etc. These are the arguments that the traditional kind of studies would make. And I subscribe to that on some level because I can see the impact that they might have. Therefore, it's about parenting, and it's about us as a group and a society to take control of that and say, what do we do about it? On the other side, as the parent, I have a Google Cardboard at home. I'm not sure if you've seen these €20 cardboard VR things. And my 3-year-old is fascinated by it because we put it on with the solar system app. She puts it on like a pair of goggles and is in space in the middle of our living room. And I see the wonder in her eyes and look at what her future is going to be like in this new world. So again, I think it comes more down to a judicious balance, but they are conversations that we've had for 50 years.
I want to ask another question we've asked our audience. The increasing digitalization of our lives, does it give us access to more culture? Will it be limited through political action, through political laws? Will it be controlled by economic instances? Or D, will it lead to a more democratic media landscape?
I think that on one side you have the promise of a brighter future than we've ever seen, with more information in a more democratic setting than the world has ever known, in a place that's free and open and available to all. On the flip side is the danger that whoever it is that's talking about the politicization of this world, where, as always in any media at any time, there's always a struggle for control. And so it's our responsibility collectively, as people, students, whatever, to inform ourselves about the choices that are being made by our politicians and actively advocate for a free and open internet and exchange of information worldwide.
But we're actually going to hear about the future of news and virtual reality. I find this a really fascinating topic because I can honestly say I don't know what to think about it. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but someone who really does know about it is Nonny de la Peña. She's the director of the Emblematic Group, and she's been a real pioneer of this technology, and she's one of the best people to hear about.
Everything you're about to hear when you put on these virtual reality goggles and when you walk through this space really happened. And I hope people don't feel daunted when they walk by and they see this strange equipment, because believe it or not, this is going to make you feel like you're actually there, actually witnessing a real scene. It's an extraordinary opportunity to be building an immersive journalism piece about the Syrian children refugees. This is one of the most pressing issues of our time. We make these pieces because we can put you on scene, make you feel like you're a witness to an actual event. You're not separated by a television or a screen, or you actually feel like you're there. I started as a print journalist, and then I became a documentary filmmaker. And so I took all that knowledge in my traditional journalistic skills and married it with my love of technology. And that's where the idea of immersive journalism came from. While the process is very journalistic, it's slightly different than, say, a broadcast journalist or a print journalist, in that I have to start with audio that was captured on scene. Very difficult to recreate the feelings that one has when you're listening to evocative audio that was recorded at a real scene, at a real crisis. So when I begin these pieces, I need to start there. You start with what's the subject matter about, and how do I get the right audio from which to build. Using this material, I then have to start thinking about what do we construct. We have to have the scene. So we need to have models with photorealistic textures built into the models. We've had to very carefully reconstruct through photographs, through video, using specific photographic textures, using 3D models that are made from real people's images to try to make you understand what it's like to be there, what's happening for Syrian refugee children. More than a third of Syrians have been displaced by this war. Over 52% of the refugees from Syria are children. And the reason we spend so much time on this recreation, rather than have you watch a video or listen to the audio standing alone by itself, is because of this astonishing sense of presence that this technology affords. You feel like you're actually there. You feel like you're a witness to this event. And if we can make people understand how difficult these circumstances are, perhaps they can actually start to think about what kind of change that they too can help bring about.
1/3 of all Syrians have been displaced by the war. Reports indicate children have been specifically targeted in the violence. There are now over 1 million refugee children. Food supplies are severely strained, and the number of refugees has been growing exponentially.
Wow, very, very interesting. There's a question about journalism and virtual reality. Do they work well together? Do they create more authenticity and consciousness? Do they mean a kind of confused portrayal of reality? Does anyone feel we need more empathy with what's happening in Syria and many other parts of the world?
Well, personally, for me, this was very touching, and I think this is really where VR can excel and can really take us into another place and can create this sense of immediacy and actually being there and feeling these experiences firsthand. It's very, very easy to look away, and this kind of almost forces you to look in that direction. So personally, I think absolutely yes.
What about you? I feel I'm the kind of guy who's kind of skeptical.
I actually feel the complete contrary. My feeling is that it introduces another layer of distance between, me and the event. So if I would meet someone that was in Syria and that would tell me what he or she experienced there, I think it would move me so much more than a wacky 3D simulation of whatever we think goes on there.
I think what I just saw is a version 0.1 of where this will be. So I kind of split the difference between thinking actually that seemed like a gamification of a reality rather than what will be without even a shadow of a doubt. A fully immersive, absolutely real-time experience where if you want to be in Homs, instead of having a reporter in front of a screen, in Homs telling you the story of what's going on there and you looking at somebody in a one-dimensional or two-dimensional way, you will be actually in situ. And if it's not a reporter with a 360-degree virtual reality camera, it will be a drone that will provide the same kind of feed for you to actually experience what's going on there right now, maybe talking or experiencing, speaking to real people. But until we get over that gap, I think we're still in the land of experimentation and very, very early days of where this will all go.
I'm really enjoying these graphics though, because it's kind of representing my split thoughts on this, because this is the closest we've had so far. 36 people are generally positive, and 27 think no, it's distorting it. And what you said about gamification interested me, because of course it does have this video game feeling. And I've been, as a journalist, always doing the arguments about, do video games cause more violence? And the argument is, well, they're clearly not real, so therefore it has no bearing on reality. And I wondered if you can have the argument both ways. It is either real or it isn't.
Well, you're dehumanizing a very human situation by rendering it in 3D, for example. I think that doesn't do any justice to the actual tragedy that's going on in that area. It's a tiny window on where things will be in 5 years' time.
Because you've seen this from the inside. It's moving fast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's moving very, very fast. And I agree with you, the graphics probably don't do it any justice, but on the other hand, we all know the experience. When you're inside these virtual realities, it does feel different, and you do really feel like you are in a different situation.
Thank you all very much for your expertise and your great contribution to what I hope was an interesting debate. Thank you very much for joining me.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Well, so much to think about, so much to talk about, and the way things are developing, probably next year there's a whole host of new themes and new topics to discuss at the 9th edition of the CTV conference. Bis zum nächsten Mal.